Imagine discovering undeniable proof of Bigfoot's existence, only to learn that this evidence has been deliberately concealed. Recent leaks suggest that the government is hiding compelling evidence of the legendary creature, sparking intense debate and curiosity. Why would such information be kept from the public, and what could be the reasons behind this secrecy?
In 1958, Jerry Crew, a logging company bulldozer operator in Humboldt County, California, discovered a set of large 16-inch human-like footprints sunk deep within the mud in the Six Rivers National Forest. Upon informing his coworkers, many claimed to have seen similar tracks on previous job sites, as well as telling of odd incidents such as an oil drum weighing 450 pounds having been moved without explanation. Soon began to utilize the term Bigfoot to describe the mysterious culprit. Jerry, who initially believed someone was playing a prank on them, once again observed more of these numerous massive footprints and contacted a reporter. A plaster cast was made of the footprints, and Jerry appeared holding one of the casts on the front page of a newspaper on October 6, 1958. With multiple people experiencing the same thing, it makes me question how it could not be real. Number 9. One of the earliest sightings in Florida. In 1975 in Florida, Collier County, a family found some Bigfoot footprints. A family went hunting out on a boys' trip, and the man retelling the story was 13 years old at the time. He said, "My family drove out to a secluded area of the Everglades, way out in the middle of nowhere. We tracked through waist-high vegetation growth, and when we reached a clearing and continued in a horizontal line towards a tree line approximately 100 yards away. We supposedly were hunting for rabbits, but never saw one. As we approached the tree line, we came upon a recently dried out water hole. Here is where I spotted the tracks. They were at least 17 inches in length, 2 half prints and 1 full print in the mud going into the brush line. The brush on the other side was thrashed. I recall that we left the area not longer after it, and it basically ended our trip. I feel like with what I know now, it was a skunk ape. I swear on the Bible on this experience. I clearly remember no sign of animal activity to include land or air. No birds. Weird for 7 p.m. aka dusk in the Everglades. 6 of us saw it, but at the time none of us said anything. I remember it was 1975, only 8 years after the Patterson film. Number 8. California State. In the United States, California is the state with the most reported Bigfoot sightings. So far, there have been 461 reported sightings. This is a real story from January 2022. A family was hiking in Humboldt County on a local trail in Redcrest. They hiked this trail for 19 years and do it 3 to 4 times a week, and they always go as a family. Their story goes, in the summer we hiked the trail nearly every day. We've never ever gotten the creeps in those woods. The last 2 hikes have really changed that. We were nearly done. On our way out when a loud, and I'm talking loud, yell, scream, guttural screech echoed through the woods. My family and I have grown up in redwoods. We've heard everything that nature has to offer in the way of animal sounds, but it wasn't a raven, a fox, a bear, a lion, a deer bleat, a chipmunk, or a hawk. It sounded somewhat like a human, but the fact that it traveled through the woods so clearly and loud really shook all of us. Today, the sound was nothing we've ever heard before. It was loud and defined. It was just far enough in the distance for whatever it was to get its point across without making us petrified. It stopped my mother, me, and my son in our tracks. There was no doubt that we all heard the same thing. We got the feeling that we were being watched, and that feeling didn't go away until we started driving off. Number 7. Bigfoot body. 2 men, Matt Witten and Rick Dyer, claim to have stumbled across a Bigfoot corpse in the woods northern of Georgia, and they stood by their story at a news conference in Palo Alto, during which they offered an email from an entomologist as evidence and said they have kept the body in a freezer for more than a month. Everyone who was talked down to us is going to eat their words, said Matt, an officer on medical leave from the Clayton County Police Department. Matt and Rick, a former corrections officer, announced the discovery on YouTube and their website. Although they didn't consider themselves devoted Bigfoot trackers before then, they have since started offering weekend search expeditions in Georgia for $499. The specimen they bagged, the men say, was one of several ape-like creatures they spotted cavorting the woods. Was it real or just a cash grab? Who knows, but finding the body of Bigfoot? Wow. Number 6. the footprint. In Logan, Utah, Matthew Wentz came across a large footprint he thinks could have been made by a Sasquatch in the Bear River Range. He didn't see the creature, only found the print, but he took a photo of it. Matthew, who is 6'3", explained that a mountain lion track is not much bigger than his palm, the black bear tracks he has seen are not any bigger than his hand, so that eliminates some comments of people saying it was possibly from a bear. He said, "I wear size 12 shoe, and in comparison to that, there is no bear that would make a print that big. I've looked up bear tracks, and even the largest grizzly bear, this track is bigger. That track is in the 15 to 16 inch range, which is pretty big. If you take a shoe size, it would be bigger than a size 20. The width was 6 to 7 inches. I really believe there is some tall being out there, but I have no idea what it is. It's hard to believe they would be around here because there are so many people and more going into the mountains these days compared to 30 or 40 years ago. People used to see stuff all the time." He also said, "I have multiple friends that are older than me that have seen stuff around here. They're credible, but they don't talk about it. You know, when someone has seen something and it scares them, they don't really want to talk about it or be ridiculed." Number 5. Hitchhiking? To this day, there are still sightings in Florida, and in 2021, as a commuter was driving down US 1, they were driving south just after sunset, and there was one on the road beside him and another truck. While driving, he noticed something very large walking on the west side of US 1, walking north, approaching him. His best description of what he saw was a huge football player in shoulder padding, 6 to 7 feet tall, wearing a long, shaggy fur coat. This happened in the summertime in Florida, so no human would dare wear one, it would be too hot. He said, "I slowed down as I became level with what I saw, and it had the head of an ape with a bump on its head. The fur was long and looked white, kind of like a dirty white shag carpet. As he drove past, the beast did not turn to look at him, but kept looking straight ahead. It was out in the open, and he thinks the other truck saw it too due to their driving actions, but that is just insane." Number 4. The Professor. Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum is a professor of autonomy and anthropology. He teaches at Idaho State University, and his lab houses over 300 footprint casts from a mysterious North American primate. He said, "Historical evidence for the existence of Bigfoot takes the form of Native American accounts of a wild man in the woods. Depictions are remarkably similar across tribes considering the differing regional circumstances and interpretations. As European settlers pressed westward into the wilderness, they too reported encounters with wild men, buggers, giant hairy apes, mountain devils, etc. As a student of human bipedalism, our adaptations for walking on 2 feet, the best contemporary evidence are footprints that corroborate these stories of wild men. Something is leaving oversized human-like footprints. They are either hoaxed, misidentified, or the trace of a real species. The distinctive anatomy, documented consistently over the past 70 years, is compelling evidence of the latter." Number 3. Indigenous cultures. Many of the indigenous cultures across North America and continent include tales of mysterious hair-covered creatures living in forests and legends that existed long before contemporary reports of Bigfoot. On the Tule River Indian Reservation in Central California, they believe in a group of Bigfoot called the Family. They called the largest of them hairy men, and they are estimated to be between 500 and 1,000 years old. Other tribes tell stories about Saskats, a shape-shifting creature that protects the forest. The name Sasquatch is the anglicized version of Saskats, roughly translating to hairy man. Other tales from different tribes describe them as a nocturnal race, and children were warned against saying the name so the monsters would not come and carry them off in the night. In 1847, natives talked about Skookums, a race of human-eating wild men living on the peak of Mount St. Helens in southern Washington state. Also related to this area was an alleged incident in 1924 in which a violent encounter between a group of gold prospectors and a group of ape men occurred. These allegations were reported in July 16, 1924. This has become a popular piece of Bigfoot lore, with the area now being referred to as Ape Canyon. Number 2. The Reddit Bigfoot Hunter. One Reddit user posted on the Ask Me Anything subreddit. They claim to have had countless interactions with Bigfoot and have done a lot of research. They list important things being: number 1. The most common misconception about Bigfoot is that there's only one of them. I and a vast majority of Bigfoot enthusiasts scientists believe there exists self-perpetuating species of the bipedal ape residing in North America. Cousin species are likely the abominable snowman, yeti, and yowie, among others. Number 2. As recently as 300,000 years ago, there exists skeletal evidence of a species of a massive ape called Gigantopithecus blackie.
Gigantopithecus.
A massive ape called Gigantopithecus blackie. Many Bigfoot enthusiasts believe these are ancestors of modern big feet. Number 3. There is an average of 400 reported sightings each year. Based on these reports, big feet can be characterized as follows. Walk upright, up to 8 feet tall, covered in black, brown, red fur all over their bodies except for the face, palms, and soles, secrete a foul smell, nocturnal behavior, omnivorous diet, marked intelligence and senses of smell, vision, and hearing, extremely cautious behavior around humans. The most numerous examples of physical evidence are footprint casings. The stride length heel to heel between prints is usually 4 to 5 feet, and the depth of the prints denotes the specimen weighing 600 to 700 pounds. Number 1. The President Believed. US President Theodore Roosevelt, in his 1893 book The Wilderness Hunter, writes a story he was told by an elderly mountain man named Bowman, in which a foul-smelling, bipedal creature ransacked his beaver trapping camp, stalked him, and later became hostile when it fatally broke his companion's neck in the wilderness near the Idaho-Montana border. Roosevelt notes that Bowman appeared fearful while telling the story, but attributed the trapper's folkloric German ancestry to have potentially influenced him, but it seems like he believed him. A president believing in something like this? That's unheard of. It has to be true then. Number 10. How they live. In Washington state, a team of amateur Bigfoot researchers called the Olympic Project claimed to have discovered a collection of nests which belonged to Bigfoot. They had primatologists study them, with the conclusion being that they appear to have been created by a primate. There have been structures of broken and twisted foliage seemingly placed in specific areas, which have been attributed by some to Bigfoot behavior. In some reports, lodgepole pine and other small trees have been observed bent, uprooted, or stacked in patterns such as weaved and crisscrossed, leading to some to theorize that they are potential territorial markings. Some instances have included entire deer skeletons being suspended in high trees. Some Bigfoot researchers allege that Bigfoot throws rocks as territorial displays and for communication and audible blows struck against trees or wood knocking. Number 9. Where the species came from. Primatologist John R. Napier and anthropologist Gordon Strensenberg have suggested a species of Paranthropus as a possible candidate for the Bigfoot's identity, such as Paranthropus robutus with its gorilla-like crest skull and bipedal gait. Paranthropus is characterized by robust skulls with a prominent gorilla-like sagittal crest among the middle line, which suggests strong chewing muscles and broad herbivorous teeth used for grinding. Now, it's great that they believe this, but fossils of Paranthropus are found only in Africa, so it wouldn't really explain Bigfoot being in North America, but maybe it's something similar. Number 8. Research. Doing scientific research, Steve Moon, who has 3 MFAs and a master's in anthropology, has studied Bigfoot for the past 10 years, and he claims to have had at least 12 sightings. If you want credibility to build these theories, if you want to test, you want to actually discover things, then you've got to follow that method, he said. His ultimate goal is to prove Bigfoot's existence so the species may be appreciated and preserved. We all know that he exists, but now we need to find a way for science to accept the data, he said. While on a trail in the forest, Steve mimicked a Bigfoot's howl and he could hear a response. It was recorded and the recorder picked up a faint animal-like sound after his howl. Though it is almost inaudible, there is something there. Steve said, "I may have gotten a response. It's 2 seconds after my call ends. It's descending, followed by a percussive ascending note. If I were going to interpret this possible response, it sounds like a Sasquatch was offended by my call." Number 7. It's not just one species. Now, all around the world, people tell of mysterious beasts that are part human, part ape, typically large, hairy creatures that walk on 2 legs, but always seem to stay just out of sight. There isn't just a Bigfoot in North America, but there are other beasts as well. A yowie is found in Australia, particularly in the eastern part of the continent. There have been over 3,000 distinct yowie sightings that have been reported in the Blue Mountain area of West west of Sydney. There's the Yeti, which is located in the Himalayas, which is also called the Abominable Snowman. The Orang Penyek is located in central Sumatra, Indonesia. Orang Penyek means a short person in Indonesian, which makes sense because it has a short stature and a human-like face. Local folklore says that these creatures walk with back-pointing feet to confuse anyone trying to track them. And finally, a Kimosit is located in east central Kenyan forests. Some witnesses say that the Kimosit looks like a hyena or bear and call it a Nandi bear after the Kenyan tribe that lives in its reported range. The Nandi people, however, consider the creature to be an enormous, ferocious primate that enjoys eating the brains of its victims. If there are so many creatures like this around the world, they have to exist then, right? Number 6. The theory. There have been many studies surrounding Bigfoot, and one study was conducted by John Napier and published in his book Bigfoot, the Yeti, and Sasquatch in Myth and Reality in 1973. John wrote that if a conclusion is to be reached based on scant extant hard evidence, science must declare Bigfoot does not exist. However, he found it difficult to entirely reject thousands of alleged tracks scattered over 125,000 square miles, or to dismiss all the many hundreds of eyewitnesses' accounts. John concluded, "I'm convinced that Sasquatch exists, but whether it is all it's cracked up to be is another matter altogether. There must be something in the Northwest America that needs explaining, and that something leaves man-like footprints." Number 5. Recently spotted in Pennsylvania. The Bigfoot Field Organization, aka BFRO, has their own website filled with hundreds of stories of people spotting Bigfoot. On the website, a story was posted by a user saying, "On October 5th, 2022, while my boyfriend and I were biking on the Ghost Town trails near Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, we saw a Bigfoot coming about 150 yards in front of us. He was walking along the trail towards us. We couldn't see his face, but when he saw us, he turned around quickly and walked into the woods. As we went by, we looked into the woods and didn't see anything. It was really shocking as there were no sounds or smells. As he was walking, you could see how big his stride was, and there was a huge space between his legs. We thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime thing and thought it was so cool. Yes, Bigfoot does exist. And just in case you think the BFRO just took a submitted report, the site reported that it did a follow-up and spoke with the witnesses. It even names them on the site, and they found their testimony to be credible. The investigator who put it all together, Matthew Moneymaker, who was mentioned in part 1 of the series. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, check them out. Number 4. 3 photos of Bigfoot. A keen hunter once claimed to encounter Bigfoot and unveiled shocking photo proof to the world after setting up cameras outside his house. Craig Salk really loved hunting with his wife, and to increase the odds of their hunting success, Craig set up a number of trail cameras on his land. In 2012, one of his cameras snapped a mysterious figure that didn't appear to be animal or human. Luckily, Craig was a big fan of the show Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet, and he knew exactly what he had to do. He reached out to the TV channel and showed the producers the image captured on his cameras. Animal Planet was massively impressed by the fact that Craig had managed to get 3 snaps of the mysterious creature and filmed an episode with him. After the episode aired, Craig was suddenly a star, and he was flooded with phone calls and visits from Americans who wanted to share their own bizarre paranormal experiences. Craig and his wife soon opened their land to the world to let anyone come out and examine the spot where Bigfoot was seen, take a look at the pictures, and judge for themselves. Number 3. First sighting ever. David Thompson was a surveyor and trader who worked for the Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company. He was considered one of North America's great pathfinders and surveyors as he traveled through Western North America between 1785 and 1812. Once he saw Bigfoot and wrote in his journal of his finding while in Alberta, Canada. He wrote, "January 7th, 1811. Continuing on our journey in the afternoon, we came on the track of a large animal. The snow about 6 inches deep on the ice. I measured it, 4 large toes, each 4 inches in length, to each a short claw. The ball of the foot sunk 3 inches lower than the toes. The hinder part of the foot didn't mark well, the length 14 inches by 8 inches in breadth, walking from north to south, and having passed about 6 hours. As the snow was about 6 inches in depth, the track was well defined, and we could see see it for a full 100 yards from us. This animal was proceeding north to south. We did not attempt to follow it, we had no time for it, and the hunters, eager as they are to follow and shoot every animal, made no attempt to follow this beast, for what could the balls of our fowling guns do against such an animal? Number 2. The Battle of Ape Canyon. The most successful launching pad for the public's obsession with Bigfoot is a battle that supposedly took place in a narrow gorge on the east flank of Mount St. Helens. The gorge is now called Ape Canyon. That's where, in the summer of 1924, a group of gold prospectors stumbled out of the woods shaking and glassy-eyed to tell of a 7-foot-tall ape-like animals attacking them with boulders. Fred Beck and 4 others described coming upon gorilla men near where they had built a small cabin. They saw 4 of the giant animals moving through the forest with erect, human-like strides. They were covered with long black hair, their ears were about 4 inches long and stuck straight up. They had 4 toes, short and stubby. The witnesses estimated each animal weighed around 400 pounds. Taken aback at the sight of the huge beasts, Fred fired his rifle at one of the creatures and struck 3 times, resulting in the wounded animal toppling off a cliff. This would be a mistake though, as that night the men were awakened when huge stones began hitting against their cabin. Then they heard and felt giant bodies slamming against the walls and door. The 8 men were seeking revenge and eventually tore a hole in the roof, allowing them to target Fred. Many of the rocks fell through the hole in the roof, and 2 of the rocks struck Fred, one of them rendering him unconscious for nearly 2 hours. Then when the sun began to come up, the animals broke off their attack and slipped away. The men then poked their heads out the door, and when they decided the coast was clear, they ran out of the woods. And coming in at number 1, Bigfoot kidnapping. In 1924, Albert Ostman, a lumberjack and woodsman, went on vacation in the woods. Albert had heard stories about the man-beast who supposedly roamed these woods but refused to believe them. Then everything changed. One night when he was asleep, a Sasquatch picked him up and carried him off while he was in his sleeping bag. He was carried in a sleeping bag across the country for 3 hours by the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch then dropped Albert down on a plateau, and standing around him was a family of 4 of the creatures, 2 adults and 2 children. Albert claims he was kept captive by them for 6 days. One of the Bigfoots was reported as being 8 feet tall. Now, Albert had a gun, but he decided not to use it as they had done him no harm. He stayed with the Bigfoot family, stating he ate sweet-tasting grass that they gave him, and the female Sasquatch washed and stacked leaves. He escaped by making the large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him some snuff. Albert did not tell his story for more than 24 years after it happened, in fear of being thought of as crazy. But as more Sasquatch stories appeared in the press, Albert decided to tell his story. Number 10. Bigfoot has been around for hundreds of years. Now, some people think this is just a new phenomenon that has been made up, but there have been Bigfoot sightings and reportings for hundreds of years. It first started in Canada as early as 1884, when the British colonists, a newspaper in Victoria, Canada, published an account of a gorilla-type creature captured in the area. Other accounts followed, according to the Canadian Encyclopedia. Sasquatch book author John Green compiled a list of 1,340 sightings through the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, the fact that this has been around for years and years makes me question people's doubts. Number 9. Face to face with the beast. Lawyer Matt Moneymaker lives in Dana Point in Southern California, and in his spare time he leads the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, which is a network of more than 3,000 people who claim to have seen the Sasquatch. In the woods of eastern Ohio, he claims he finally came eye to eye with it. He recounted this story, saying, "It was 2 o'clock in the morning and the moon was a quarter full. Suddenly, there he was, an 8-foot tall creature standing 15 feet away, growling at me. He wanted me to know that I was in the wrong place." Now, although he leads the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, no one from the organization has been able to snap a clear picture of the beast. Everyone there has their own experience with Bigfoot though. Number 8. Whitehall Trail. In 1976, multiple witnesses, including local police and a New York State trooper, said they saw a man-like beast standing over 7 to 8 feet tall and covered with hair. A blurry photo was taken from a Whitehall trail cam in 2010, and it is among hundreds of reported Bigfoot sightings across the state. Whitehall has its own Bigfoot event, the Sasquatch Calling Festival, with a competition for the best Bigfoot calls to attract the elusive animal. Bigfoot has reported reportedly been sighted in many other places, including Washington State in 2020, which kept the hope alive for the enthusiasts across the US. A Mayville, New York resident, Peter Weimer, told WGRZ that he's heard from 45 eyewitnesses who claim to have seen the Sasquatch in the area around Chautauqua Lake, located 60 miles south of Buffalo. There are 100 or more witnesses in Chautauqua County that aren't talking to me, Peter told the TV station. Now, according to WGRZ, the county is packed with dense forests and deep gorges where a large animal could live but rarely be seen, like the black bear. Peter, who sponsors the annual Chautauqua Lake Bigfoot Expo event for believers and fans, says footprints seen in nearby Asheville, New York are further evidence that Sasquatch is out there. Number 7. Vocalizations. Alleged vocalizations such as howls, screams, moans, grunts, whistles, and even a form of supposed language have been reported and allegedly recorded from Bigfoot. Some of these alleged vocalization recordings have been analyzed by individuals such as retired US Navy cryptologic linguistic Scott Nelson. He analyzed audio recordings from the early 1970s said to be recorded in the Sierra Nevada mountains, dubbed the Sierra Sounds. When speaking about his findings, he said, "It's definitely a language, it's definitely not in human origin, and it could not have been faked." So yeah, they have their own language we choose to ignore. Number 6. Footprints. Investigator Jimmy Chilcutt of the Conroe Police Department in Texas, who specializes in finger and footprints, has analyzed more than 150 casts of Bigfoot prints that Meldrum, the Idaho State professor, keeps in a laboratory. Jim says one footprint found in 1987 in Walla Walla in Washington State has convinced him that Bigfoot is real. He said, "The ridge flow pattern and the texture was completely different from anything I've seen. It certainly wasn't human and of no known primate that I've examined. The print ridges flowed lengthwise along the foot, unlike human prints which flow across. The texture of the ridges was about twice the thickness of a human, which indicated that this animal has a real thick skin." Now, number 5. Bigfoot-like creature found. Showman Frank Hansen exhibited the Iceman, a Bigfoot-like creature encased in ice, at the International Livestock Exposition in Chicago. This relic of the Ice Age was found in the waters off Siberia. In December 1968, Bernard Heuvelmans of Royal Institute of Natural Sciences of Belgium examined the creature in a trailer in Minnesota. They said, "We consider this to be a genuine and unique example of the most priceless specimen." In a scientific journal, Bernard declared that he discovered a new species of man. In April 1969, the Smithsonian appealed to the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover for help. Hoover declined, citing the absence of a violation of a federal law within our investigation jurisdiction. It's reported that the US Customs would look into it, the body. After all, it was supposedly imported. Meanwhile, Frank put a model of the specimen on display. Number 4. Bigfoot video. The most famous Bigfoot video is a short film taken in 1967 by Roger Patterson and Bob Gilman, known as the Patterson Film. Shot in Bluff Creek, the video shows what appears to be a large and hairy bipedal ape, or Bigfoot, striding through a clearing. The video's authenticity is still debated, with some thinking it was likely a hoax, with the ape-like figure just a human wearing a costume. Despite this, it is seen as one of the most compelling photographic evidence of Bigfoot. It appears to document a female Bigfoot striding along a riverbank in Northern California, and it certainly wasn't human. Number 3. Suing the government over Bigfoot. Todd Standing claims his first close encounter with Bigfoot was in 2005, and that it dramatically changed his life. The filmmaker and wilderness guide from Edmonton says he saw a 9-foot-tall bipedal creature with a very human-like face high up in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia. He says he saw it stand up and squat down. His video of the sighting, posted on YouTube, has more than 300,000 views, and he is suing the provincial government of BC in an effort to prove the existence of Bigfoot in court. He says that provincial wildlife officials are turning a blind eye to his findings. His lawsuit calls for a judge to declare that Sasquatch exists and for a wildlife official to accompany him on a 3-month hunt for one of the creatures. He said, "I've seen Sasquatch so many times, I mean over 50 times. I filmed them 8 different times." He claims fish and wildlife officials are deliberately ignoring his findings, which do not include any actual specimens, living or dead. They won't look into the evidence, so that's why he must go to court to prove it. Number 2. a Bigfoot study. A Bigfoot study called the Sasquatch Genome Project was led by genetic scientists. It was a 5-year study and took almost $500,000 to fund. The group followed a mother and daughter Bigfoot in Kentucky, and they claim there's thousands of them in the USA. The group captured videos and photos as evidence, but they also acquired DNA. The DNA has given them a theory that this creature is a hybrid of human. The DNA was sent to UT Southwestern, New York University, and North Louisiana Crime Lab. The results came back as human, but others did not. The scientists say whether you want to accept it or not, they have found proof that Sasquatch is a human relative that arose approximately 15,000 years ago as a hybrid cross of a modern Homo sapiens with an unknown primate species. The group called for this to be recognized officially, saying the government at all levels must recognize them as indigenous people and immediately protect their human and constitutional rights against those who would see in their physical and cultural differences a license to hunt, trap, or kill them. And number 1, the FBI got involved. An Oregon man intent on proving the existence of a mythical creature known as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Abominable Snowman, and Yeti in 1976 managed to get the FBI to test hair and tissue samples that he believed might help his case, according to newly released records. The FBI has analyzed hair in connection with the search for Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot. An internal FBI memo noted in February 1977 said, "The man who spurred the analysis, 93-year-old Peter Brine, told CNBC that he hasn't given up hope proving that Bigfoot is real, if exceedingly rare creature." FBI agent wrote back to Peter saying, "We will examine the hairs and tissue mentioned in your letter." It was the first time that the FBI apparently tested a sample of hair to see if it was Bigfoot, according to the records, which contained photocopied images of the hairs. The FBI said the examination of the hair concluded a study of morphological characteristics such as root structure, medullary structure, and cuticle thickness in addition to scale casts. Also, the hairs were compared directly with hairs of known origin under a comparison microscope. At the end of all that, it was concluded as a result of these examinations that the hairs are of deer family origin. The hair sample you submitted is being returned as enclosed in this letter, it said. Was it really deer hair, or were they covering up the fact that it actually was Bigfoot? The fact that they even tested the hair is insane.